All right. Hello, everyone. It's right on that hour mark, so we'll go ahead and get started today. Welcome and thank you for joining our August Acumatica webinar. So today's webinar is really part 2 of our data analysis series. A couple of housekeeping items and intros before we go ahead and get started today. I'm Kaylee Hansen, a pre-sale and business solutions consultant with SVA. And joining me today is Jacob, a principal here at SVA Consulting, on our data analysis and visualization team. So Jacob will be walking through the majority of our webinar today. And as we go through the webinar, please feel free to drop your questions within the chat. We'll be monitoring those. And if we can stop and answer those within the moment, we will. Otherwise, we'll have a bit of Q&A at the end to wrap us up. So with that, I think we can go ahead and get started, and I'll hand it off to Jacob.
Sounds good. Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you guys for having me today. I'm excited to talk through some data visualization strategies using Acumatica data and some other tools as well. So let me hop here to our agenda. Really what we'll be covering is concepts surrounding data centralization and visualization. We'll talk through where should we visualize data, whether that's in Acumatica or other tool sets. We'll do a live demo where we take a Power BI dashboard and embed that into Acumatica and show some of the functionality that can exist when you do embed a dashboard there. And then at any point, you feel free to stop me and ask questions. And at the end, we'll cover some next steps as well. Really, our overall goal is to give you a high-level overview of some concepts surrounding data centralization and visualization, some considerations on where you visualize your data and why it matters, and then again, we'll do a demo at the end. From a data centralization perspective, we'll set up a scenario here, and let's pretend that we are a venture company that has several companies underneath us called Muffins and Sweet Life, and they are bakery businesses that have a retail and a wholesale component. So they sell these delicious baked goods, and thankfully have implemented Acumatica for their business. And so when they want to get a complete view of their business, the majority of their data exists inside of Acumatica. And these are things like sales orders, costs, revenue, locations, inventory, employees, customers, so on and so forth. And there's a lot of information you can get from that data that's in your ERP system, but we often find that there are these external data sources as well, such as customer satisfaction surveys, marketing campaigns, information on your vehicles and your fleet, or even other files that might not yet be integrated with Acumatica or brought into Acumatica. And so how do we get a complete view of our business? It's okay that this data exists outside of Acumatica, but there might be key business questions to answer that require data from your ERP and these other sources. So maybe we want to know, how did our revenue change after a big marketing campaign? Or we've seen sales slightly trail off. Have we checked our satisfaction surveys and seen if there's a relation between the two? Getting that complete view of your business, you really need to be able to centralize your data and report on it together. And so you need some type of tool or place to do that. Why is data centralization important? We talked about it a little bit already, but this slide really just offers a comparison between when you centralize your data on the left-hand side in green, and then maybe your current state for some of you from a decentralized perspective. And in the gray middle, we speak to, just from a high level, some of the reasons that are impacted by either centralizing or not centralizing your data. A really key one is data accessibility and collaboration. And another one as well is efficiency and resource utilization. So imagine that you have data that needs to be used by several people within the business who might be in different departments or functions. Whenever our data are decentralized, each function or department might be performing their own analysis on that data, and they might even come to slightly different conclusions based on choices or business logic that they implemented in Excel, for example, that maybe the other group wasn't aware of. So you have these two versions of reports sitting out there now, and really two sources of truth. And that could have been avoided if we had centralized the data and provisioned a single source for people to access information and answer key questions. And so centralizing really just enhances that accessibility. It helps take manual reporting processes and automate them, and really can streamline a lot of your data management inside of your business as well. So what is a centralized data repository? What does that look like? What do I mean whenever I say that? Really, if we use just a layman's term, I'm most of the time speaking about a database, or some people will call it a data warehouse. But it's the idea that all of your source system data on the left-hand side here, such as Acumatica or legacy ERP data, can come together and be ingested into this central database. And inside that database is a wonderful place to store some business logic or perform joins between data sources, and really just enhance your core Acumatica data. Outside of that database, this arrow pointing here on the right-hand side is all about data access. How do end users get data to perform their day-to-day functions and become better employees or help grow the business? And there's three ways I'll highlight today. One, data visualization tools exist for a reason. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but their core functionality is to model data and then visualize it so end users can get answers to their core questions. You can also distribute those reports and provision access as well, in a really granular way. People can also obviously access data from the database itself. So the example I'm showing here is a cloud database called Snowflake. And there's a lot of permissions and security around that as well. And then, of course, you can access data within your ERP system. That can indeed pull from a database if needed. Excel and Velixo also are great ways to get to data that you've centralized. If building out a database is something that seems like a lofty goal or difficult to accomplish in your current state, we have seen people and we have helped clients take an intermediate approach of really taking the couple source systems they have and combining that data together in a visualization tool like Power BI. What's really nice in Power BI is that it can connect to numerous data sources, including Acumatica via OData connections. And really, Power BI lets you model and join data from multiple sources together, and has really powerful transformation capabilities as well. You can publish those data sources. People can build visualizations off of them and answer key business questions along the way. And what we'll show later in the demo is how we can actually embed those back into Acumatica to enhance the user's experience there. When would we recommend this above approach of using a visualization tool for your data centralization? Well, really, we see people do it when they only have a couple of data sources and they really want visualizations that are enhanced above where Acumatica would provide out of the box. It's also really nice whenever people want to perform additional data modeling or transformations that might not be possible in Acumatica. And then really, if people don't have much historic data or legacy ERP data that they need to incorporate or track, simply a direct connection from Power BI to your ERP system or other systems can be sufficient without having a database in place. And really, it's a nice place to start. So even if you do plan to eventually build out a database, developing these connections up front and beginning to build from a visualization perspective is a really nice place to get some quick wins for the business and surface data in an automated way out of your Acumatica system. The flip side, when would we recommend graduating up to a database? A database really is how you do centralized data. It's how you can, in a programmatic way, bring data together that's consistent, reliable, and scalable. So we see people go here when they have numerous data sources and really complex data transformations or business logic that they want to centralize and have standardized. We also see clients leverage a database whenever they're moving from an old ERP system to Acumatica. The database gives them the opportunity to store that data in the database instead of bringing all of that historic data into Acumatica. And lastly, if your data volume is high or constantly changing and updating, a database is really well suited to handle that as well. When we think about data visualization, I do want to cover very briefly why we would visualize data instead of relying on maybe tabular reports out of Acumatica or Excel. You guys probably know this, but visualizing data really helps expose information in an easy to use and consume format. You can really easily see trends and outliers or patterns in your data, and you can provision access so that people have the appropriate information at the appropriate time within your organization. And lastly, visualizing data and creating a database as well helps you automate a lot of your core reporting processes so that people can have actionable and up-to-date information. So on the next two slides, I'll show two visualizations to speak to some of these points. This first one is a question on which of these two images is faster to see the direction that a forecast is headed. So the top is a tabular or table level information of 3 segments that we have in a business. And we can see that we've got actual sales amounts and estimates for each month going forward. The bottom one is a visualized version of that top table. And I would argue that the bottom, whenever we visualize data, is much faster to see the direction that an estimate is heading, and it can answer questions relatively quickly. If we were actually in Tableau where I built this, you would be able to hover over each of these points if you wanted to see the values. The table does have a time and place if you do need that granular information and you need to see exact values or even work with it in Excel. Obviously, the table is going to be the better choice there. But oftentimes, whenever we visualize data, it's because people need quick information or actionable information that they can more easily glean from a visual. The second example here really speaks to probably an example that we all face within our organization. Someone has a theory or an idea that Alexander and Benjamin always have excess overtime each month. Well, we might create a report in Acumatica to pull time for each of these two people, or we could have a standard dashboard we put together with time entry data out of Acumatica that looks at how much overtime each person has by month. So that's what's happening in the heat map table here, and then also an average over the months that we're showing. So if we had this visual in place, we could actually very quickly agree Alexander does have a lot of overtime, but Benjamin, in fact, does not have a lot of overtime. It's actually Emily who's, kind of tied with Alexander from a monthly average perspective. So really, visualizations bring clarity and focus to conversations and decisions that are being made in your organization. And especially if these business questions are defined up front, your team or your consulting team can help build out standard reports that answer those questions in a repeatable and automated manner. We get this question really frequently on where should we visualize data or where should we surface our data? And what I want to say today is it really just depends on what data you have, what you want to and need to report on, and how complex any of the data transformations are that need to be put in place so that you can answer questions. We'll also highlight that your tool set doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. You very well might use 3 or 4 different tools. Each one can have its own purpose. And really, it might evolve as your business grows. So the 3 that we've been discussing today are Acumatica, Velixo, and Power BI. and I'll walk through a couple of points on some of the highlights of why it's a great idea to use each of these tools. So from an Acumatica perspective, each of you are likely using reports or dashboards or generic inquiries in the system today. And it's wonderful for getting quick information while a user is in the system. You can typically click on something and drill into additional screens and really self-serve and get information you need out of the system to help progress your day forward. Velixo is also a wonderful tool because it can connect to your Acumatica data and pull that data out into Excel. All of us love Excel functionality. We're comfortable there. And it's really great for analyzing your data in forecasting or budgeting or operational questions as well. You could even bring in additional data to Excel and relate it or join it in with your Acumatica data, perform analyses, and then push it back into Acumatica if you wanted to. From a Power BI perspective or Tableau or any visualization tool of choice, they really shine because the focus is purely on data visualization. You know, an ERP system is focused on being an ERP system. That's its job. Its core job is not to be a visualization tool. Power BI's core job is to be that tool, and it really helps you connect to numerous data sources or databases. It can handle the complex data transformations that your business might need to answer these questions they're asking. You can refresh your data sources to pull data from Acumatica daily or several times a day. And what's really nice is you can provision user access to Power BI dashboards who might not have access to Acumatica directly. Maybe they just need some type of summary level information out of the ERP to go perform their duties. A visualization tool gives you a great opportunity to have a sectioned off place that people can get information. And then really what I'll show you today is Power BI can be really interactive and exploratory and help you uncover trends in your data that you might not be able to get out of Acumatica on its own. So from a demo perspective, I'll hop into Power BI and Acumatica here shortly, but I'll walk through the steps that we've already worked through prior to this webinar so that you're caught up to speed on what we've done. So in order to connect Power BI to Acumatica, build a dashboard and publish it back, we first have to have some core business questions we want to answer and create some generic inquiries in Acumatica that surface that data that we want in Power BI. These next 4 points here all happen in Power BI. So what we did is we built out a data source and chose to use an OData query to connect to Acumatica and chose our generic inquiry. We created a data model in Power BI that performed any data transformations or calculations or combining other data sources together. We then built out data visualizations and organized them on a dashboard to answer key questions and surface interactivity between each of the visualizations. And then we published it to our Power BI online service, and we can schedule the data source to refresh at a desired frequency if we wanted to. The pieces I'll show you today in Acumatica are how we then can take that Power BI dashboard and actually embed it into an Acumatica dashboard, and we'll show some of the steps to get there. I'll pause briefly for any questions if there are any on that initial section prior to us hopping in.
It doesn't look like we have any questions at this time, Jacob.
Perfect. Sounds good. Okay. Did that share still, Kaylee?
Yeah, we can see your dashboard.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So what I'm showing here is a dashboard that we have published in SVA's Power BI site. And it's the same bakery example we set up at the beginning, where we've got 4 different branches that we're pulling out of Acumatica to look at all of that data from a combined perspective. So we have some charts that analyze gross profit by month and branch or per order, gross profit by customer name, and then what's our gross profit by item as well. What's really great about a visualization tool is you can begin to click through and interact with your data. So if we want to know what's the gross profit that Citrus Store is doing each month, we can see it highlights these bars here. We can also see for Citrus Store, what's the typical item mix that they purchase and what's the gross profit we've gotten from them making those purchases. So the interactivity here, if we want to see how much peach cobbler we're selling and to which customers, we can click on that item. It'll filter our customer list as well. And we can see, this coffee and cafe place buys a decent amount. And we can just explore and interact with that data. Let's say we want to get a little bit more information on one of these customers. Well, we've built out a customer overview that we can actually drill through to Allen's Bakery here. And so now I built out a page that's all about this single customer. We can see their total gross profit, their typical gross profit per order and quantity, and these trend lines as well. So it tells us, what are the typical months that they have higher volumes of orders or more profitable orders? We can see their gross profit by item mix. And again, click on each of these items to see their purchasing and gross profit trends as well. The bottom section here, we're surfacing some tabular data about individual sales orders. So if we want to see everything related to them purchasing pecan pie, we can click on pecan pie to filter and now begin to see the order numbers, the profit and quantity that's taking place. A lot of our discussion today has been about combining data from multiple sources. And so we used Power BI to bring in an Excel file that we had on customer surveys related to order numbers. And so again, using our pecan pie example, we want to see which orders we had and how satisfied customers were. And so we can see for a couple of different metrics that we collect on our surveys, some grand total averages at the bottom, and we can even click on an individual order to understand what were the lines on the order, the profit, the quantity, so on and so forth. So this is what we did in Power BI to bring 2 data sets together to answer information about just our customers overall, our company overall, and then bring in that survey data to see satisfaction scores as well. Let's say we now want to take this dashboard and place it in Acumatica itself. So this is our demo site for Acumatica, and all I've done previously is create a blank dashboard. When we're ready to actually embed, we can come and click on this design button to, I gotta log back in. There we go. Okay, we can click on this design button and it'll add a new widget. And in here, we'll actually be using this embedded page option. I will briefly speak to the Power BI tile here. So a Power BI tile, if we were to go through these processes, we would put in our information to connect to Power BI. You would use this tile if you wanted to take a single visualization from a Power BI report. So let's say we only wanted to take this single bar chart. That's when we would use this Power BI tile option. What I want to do today is actually embed my entire dashboard. And so I'll choose this embedded page option. For the source, what we can do in Power BI is grab onto this embed report, click on website or portal, and then they give you a link to embed that. So we can copy that link into here, click finish, and you'll see it's loading our dashboard. It's very small. And so we can then begin to expand, make this take up more of the screen, so on and so forth. What I've done previously as well is put this together so that it does take up the full screen and looks nice and neat for us. What's really interesting and fun is that we actually have the same functionality in Power BI here that we've embedded. So we can still let our end users work and function within Acumatica. They don't have to go out to another system, but they can get this type of interactive or exploratory analysis in the same tool they're already used to working in. So again, let's say we want to drill through on one of our customers. We can go to Allen's Bakery. We can see their surveys, so on and so forth. The last piece here that's really interesting is we can actually surface links in Power BI that open up additional screens in Acumatica. So let's say we've done an analysis on Allen's Bakery and we want to know more about the customer in general. Well, in our Power BI dashboard, we've placed these URL links that will take us to specific pages in Acumatica. So this will take us to our single customer, Allen's Bakery, and we can begin to navigate any of these tabs or make edits if we need to, so on and so forth. Let's say we want to look at more details on this order number. Well, we can also include a link there to pull up the specific sales order and do additional analyses or investigation if we need to. So for our example today, we just put in URL links for customer name, order, and item. Your use cases might be similar, they might be very different, but really any page in Acumatica that end users would have access to, you could build out functionality in your Power BI report to where people could be analyzing the report, asking questions, and then still drill into different pages in Acumatica. It provides some of the functionality that an Acumatica dashboard itself would provide when you're able to click on something and drill through. Embedding Power BI just gives you kind of enhanced visualizations and interactive functionality where you are working. All right, let me share. Kaylee, can you confirm my PowerPoint came back up?
Yep, yeah, we can see it.
Perfect, thank you. So where do we begin with visualizing data? We often tell or work with our clients to begin with the end in mind. So what are your core business questions that you are hoping to answer? If you identify those, you have a very targeted direction that you're planning to head, and each of your choices along the way can then be purposeful to accomplish that goal. We like to help clients understand the availability of their data and the feasibility of building something out. And we also like to address data quality and see, is the data being cleaned, and is it being captured and controlled properly so that you can answer those business questions? And then really at the end, you develop a roadmap and build and select tools to help you answer questions in the right place for your end users. The last piece I'll speak to is just about SVA Consulting's data and analytics offerings. So a lot of what we've covered today is kind of our bread and butter and what we do. And especially defining requirements and creating a strategy up front is a place we love to operate in. We like to help people make the most of their data so that you can automate reports and free people up to do the parts of their job that are actually life-giving and really purposeful instead of crunching numbers. And so the strategy component speaks a lot there. We help build data architecture, so databases or integrations or data modeling. Of course, we do a decent amount of data visualization as well, and embedded analytics like I showed today, and then training and end user support as well. What we find when people do go on this endeavor is you get measurable results. So you have an increased time to insight, financial or operational visibility and efficiencies are gained, and really your end users get to have information to make core decisions. And with that, Kaylee, I will hand it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. And thank you all for attending today. I know we mentioned kind of our 3-part data analysis series. So this was part 2. If you missed our last series, you can find it on our webinar series on YouTube. So go to YouTube, SVA Consulting, and Acumatica Webinars. In that previous one, we walked through some of the core data analysis features within Acumatica, including Acumatica dashboards. Jacob walked us through more of those Power BI components today and how that can interact with Acumatica as well. And then our next webinar is on September 11th, and that will really be looking at and exploring the Belixo tool that natively integrates with Acumatica as well. So if you're interested in joining that session, if you've liked what you've seen so far, you can scan that QR code and sign up right away. Again, anything that you saw today that you liked, you want to learn more from Jacob, you can contact us either through our website or those 2 emails below, contact@sva.com or tech support@sva.com. And with that, I think we can go ahead and wrap up today if there aren't any last questions. So thank you all for joining, and we'll plan to see you next month.